Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Can all of you hear me? Alhamdulillahi wa kafa wa salamun ala ibadihi allazina astafa amma ba'd. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Yasin wal Qur'anil hakim. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun. Wa salamun ala al-mursaleen walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم. Today, we were scheduled to give our talk on Dars-e-Quran, Tafsir of the Quran. But since we are starting the new semester, our heart is inclined to talk about something a little different today. Quran is a blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it's an opportunity to strengthen our relationship with Allah ta'ala. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has permitted a very special relationship that we can have with Him, and that is of love. And I want to start this year and this new semester. We would want to start this on the right foot with the right intentions, with the proper driving force behind all of our amal that we intend to do, inshallah. And that is that we want to have a stronger relationship with Allah Ta'ala. And that is why I want to speak about Quran as a way through which we can attain the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So rather than starting with the proper dars and the tafsir, we would like to start with this topic about understanding the power of Quran, the azmat of Quran, and how Quran enables us to come close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is a kitab that Allah Ta'ala says that kitabun anzallahu ilayk. That this is a book that we have sent upon you. لِتُخْرِجَ النَّاسَ مِنَ الظُّلُمَاتِ إِلَى النُّورِ. A book that will take humanity out from multiple darknesses into light. This is the introduction that Allah Ta'ala is giving about Quran. That Quran, Azim Shan, it's a book that brings out humanity from multiple darknesses into light. From the darkness of sorrow, from the darkness of worries, from the darkness of depression, from the darknesses of our sins, the darknesses of our ghaflat, our heedlessness. It brings us out from all of these darknesses into nur, into the light of the muhabbat of Allah and a relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It shows the right path to those who are lost. It connects those to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who are disconnected. So Quran, it's a way of life. And that's why Allah ta'ala says that tabarrak bil Quran, that take a barakat from Quran, فَإِنَّهُ kalamullah, because this is the kalam of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the more and more we have an attachment with the Quran, the more and more Allah Ta'ala will put barakah in our life. And the less attachment that we have with the Quran, there will be less barakah in our life. And the Quran Azim wa Shan, Quran Majid is a book that is so beautiful that just looking at the Quran is ibadat. It's a worship. Touching Quran is an act of worship. Reciting it is an act of worship. Teaching it is also an act of worship. And then listening to it, reading to others, understanding and acting upon and memorizing all of this, all of these things are acts of worship. We are very familiar with the magnets. We know magnet, it attracts iron towards itself. So we can also understand Quran, that Quran is a magnet through which we can attract the barakat from Allah Ta'ala, through which we can attract the anwarat, lights from the nur from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, through which we can attract the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that is why any gathering in which Quran is being recited or Quran is being listened to, that gathering, it attracts the blessings from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, barakat from Allah ta'ala. Allah ta'ala is pouring His barakat upon such a gathering. That's why in Quran Allah ta'ala says that وَإِذَا قُرِئَ الْقُرْآنِ, that when Quran is being recited, فَاسْتَمِعُوا لَهُ وَأَنْصِتُوا, then you should listen to the Quran with attentiveness and you should be silent. لَعَلَّكُمْ تُرْحَمُونَ, so that you are able to attain rahmat from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So whenever Quran is being recited, whenever a person is engaging the Quran, Allah Ta'ala is sending His rahmat upon that person. Now, we will only get this rahmat from Allah Ta'ala, these blessings from Allah Ta'ala, when we position our heart correctly. Because this is a principle all of us know, that no matter how hard it rains, if the container is not positioned in the correct way, then it will remain empty. If you put it upside down, no matter how hard it's raining, you won't be able to get any water. And that's not the fault of the rain, it's the fault of the pot, the container, that the container is lying upside down. That is why Allah Ta'ala says that inna fi dhalika la dhikra, that this Quran has a reminder, this Quran has a zikr, this Quran has a nasiha. But for who? Liman kana lahu qalbun. It has a nasiha, it has a zikr, it has a reminder for that individual who has a qalb, who has a heart. Yani the heart should be present, the heart should be alive. If the heart is dead and instead of having a heart, we have a hardness there, the heart is not alive, the heart is not present, the heart is not attentive, then the person will be reading Quran, reciting Quran, he won't be able to benefit from Quran. Because Quran is a zikr, it's a reminder, it's a remembrance, it's a guidance, it's a nasiha for that individual who has, number one, a qalb. And the ayat continues, أَوْ أَلْقَ السَّمْعَ, and the person is listening to the Quran. He is attentive to the Quran. وَهُوَ shaheed, and he is also present. So he is present both physically as well as attentive with his heart. The heart is alive. So in this ayat, Allah Ta'ala is teaching us that the three conditions for us to benefit from the Quran. That the heart should be there, and there should be a presence of our mind, and a presence of our physical self as well. If all three conditions are there, then Quran becomes inna fi dhalika la dhikra, then a person will be able to attain the zikr, the remembrance, the reminder that Allah Ta'ala has sent in the Quran. They'll be able to receive those blessings. they'll be able to receive those anwarat from Allah Ta'ala. Then now the heart is positioned correctly. It will receive all of that. So there is a sweetness that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has kept in the Quran. There is no other book in this world which has been memorized by so many people as that of Quran. This is one of the mu'jiza, the greatness of the Quran, that Allah Ta'ala has made Quran easy for people to memorize. There is a strange sweetness that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has kept in the recitation of the Quran. There is no other book in this world whose readers they read the who read that book so differently the way Quran is read in such a melodious voice. Children, they're reading the Quran in so many different places all around the world. This is one of the mu'jiza of the Quran. This is one of our tragedy of our time, that there was a time when we look at the early Muslims, they used to recite the Quran during the night, during their tahajjud, so much so that if someone would walk around the streets of Medina Munawwara at the time of tahajjud, they could hear voices of recitation of Quran. And the voices would be such as if there are flies, there is a buzzing sound. The entire street, all the streets and the entire environment was like was buzzing with the sound of Quran. It was a city which was alive. And now if you walk around the streets in the night, there is so much of silence. Everyone is sleeping. Or people are engaged in useless activities, futile activities till 2 at night. And then people sleep when it's time to ask from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There was once a Sahabi who was reciting Quran at the time of Tahajjud. And he was so eager to recite the Quran, he wanted to recite it loudly. But then there was this horse which was tied and a child was sleeping nearby. And he felt that as soon as he raised his voice for reciting Quran, the horse would become restless. So he feared that the horse might become restless, he might hurt the child. So then he would start reading Quran quietly again and in a low voice, soft voice. Then again he would become restless, would become eager to recite it loudly. And again the same thing would happen. And this kept on happening the whole night. So then he finished his tahajjud salah. And after that he raised his hands to make dua. And when he raised his hands, he noticed that there was these small lights which were glowing like stars. And these lights were ascending and going back towards the sky. They were going up towards the sky. He was amazed at this sight. And then later on, he presented himself before the Prophet ﷺ, and he said that, Ya Rasulullah, O beloved of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, at night I was praying tahajjud in this way, that I would recite Quran quietly, softly, because I had this fear of my child. And I was very eager to recite Quran loudly. But then this continued throughout the night. And at the time of Fajr, when I was making dua, I saw some glowing lights which were going up towards the sky. So the beloved Prophet of Allah, Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam, he said that those lights were actually angels of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who were descending from the sky in order to listen to your Quran. And if you had continued reciting Quran loudly, then today the people of Medina Munawwara, they would have had witnessed those angels with their very own eyes. Allahu Akbar. Yani angels, they listen to the Quran. Whenever a person is reciting Quran, the angels, they descend and they're listening to the Quran. This was the night. This was how people would spend their night. Reciting Quran. Once Prophet ﷺ, once Nabi ﷺ came to Masjid al-Nabawi at the time of Tahajjud. And on one side, you saw Sayyidina Siddiq Akbar radiallahu ta'ala anhu. He was praying Nawafil and he was reciting Quran softly. And on the other side, you saw Sayyidina Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu, who was reciting Quran a bit loudly. And it's permissible to recite both ways in Nafil, in Tahajjud. But when both of the Sahaba, when both of them, they finished their Salah, they presented themselves to the Prophet ﷺ. And the Prophet ﷺ asked that Abu Bakr, why were you reciting Quran so softly? And he replied that, Ya Rasulullah, I was reciting the Quran to Allah Ta'ala, to that being who knows what is hidden inside of us. So why would I need to recite the Quran so loudly? Then the Prophet ﷺ asked Sayyidina Umar radiallahu ta'ala, that Umar, why were you reciting Quran so loudly? And he replied that, Ya Rasulullah, I was reciting the Quran so that people could wake up. I was reciting Quran for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but also so that people could wake up. The sleeping ones could wake up and to drive away shaitan. Subhanallah. Quran is used to be recited and shaitan would run away from those places. This is one of the blessings. Even today, if anyone recites Quran with love, with sincerity, then Allah Ta'ala sends His blessings upon that individual. Allah Ta'ala enlarges that person's chest. Allah Ta'ala enlightens that person's chest. Allah Ta'ala fills that person's chest with the nur. Allahu Akbar. And then the Prophet gave advice to both of them that Abu Bakr, you should recite Quran slightly loudly, and Umar, you should recite it slightly softly. So they would be reciting Quran in the middle of the night. Even today, it's the same principle. If anyone has a ta'alluq with the Quran, they recite Quran with muhabbat, with ikhlas, then Allah Ta'ala's blessings would descend upon that person, would descend upon that house, would descend upon the chest of that individual, upon the heart of that individual. Allah Ta'ala will fill their hearts with anwarat, will fill their hearts with tajalliyat, will fill their hearts with kayfiyat, will fill their hearts with fiyuzat. Allah Ta'ala will enlighten their hearts. Once Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam was walking inside Masjid al-Nabi, and Hazrat Ubay bin Ka'b radiyallahu ta'ala an, he was reciting Quran. He was reciting Quran Majid at that time. And Hazrat Ubay bin Ka'b radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, he was famous among the Sahaba as someone who was a teacher of the Quran and Qari of the Quran. He had a beautiful, wonderful voice, melodious voice in which he used to recite the Quran. Qari Quran, Imam al-Qurra. So Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam passed by and then stood beside him. And when the Sahabi noticed the Prophet was standing by, he became quiet. And he was reciting Quran, but he became quiet then. So Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said that, O Ubay Ka'b, O Abi Ibn Ka'b, keep on reciting the Quran. Recite the Quran to me. And the Sahabi said that, Ya Rasulullah, this Quran has been revealed upon you. How can I recite Quran in front of you? So Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said that yes, recite Quran because I have been ordered like this. And the way Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said this, the Sahabi, he understood. The Sahaba Ikram were also people who could take the hints. They could recognize that the Prophet ﷺ had said this in a very different way. And that Sahabi instantly recognized that this is a direction which is coming from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself. And that's why he immediately asked that Allahu Sammani, that did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala take my name? And asked you that ask a Ka'b to recite Quran. Allahu Sammani, did Allah ta'ala take my name? And the Prophet ﷺ said that Naam, yes, Allahu Sammak, that Allah Ta'ala has taken your name. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has taken your name, that ask Ubay ibn Ka'b to recite Quran and Majid. And oh my beloved, you will also listen to his Quran and I will also listen to his Quran. Allahu Akbar. Imagine how much sincerity, how much purity, how much love they would have when they would recite the Quran. They would recite the Quran with so much ikhlas, so much love, so much purity in their hearts that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would ask them to recite. That ask Ubay bin Ka'b to recite Quran. You will also listen and I will also listen to his Quran. Once Sayyidina Fatima to Zahra radiallahu ta'ala an, she made niyat of praying 2 rakat of nafil for tahajjud salah. It was a long nights of winter, right? Like, these time, this time of the year, right? Long winter nights. So she made niyat of 2 rakat. And she was enjoying that recitation of Quran so much. She was reciting Quran in her salah. Enjoying that recitation so much, enjoying that feeling. So having this beautiful feeling of reciting Quran, that she kept on praying and praying and praying. And she was reciting each ayat with sweetness, with joy, enjoying each ayat. And she kept on reciting the Quran. And as she finished, she noticed that it was almost time for Fajr. So then she raised her hands and she made dua and started crying in her dua and said that, oh Allah, I just made niyat for 2 rakat. How short is your night that it cannot contain the 2 rakat of Fatima? And they would complain about the night being short. They would feel the sweetness of Quran. They would enjoy Quran. And they would want to keep on enjoying Quran. And then they would be complaining about the night, that, oh, night, you're too short. So they were people who were attached with the Quran. Allahu Akbar. Once the Prophet ﷺ was returning back from jihad, and Nabi Islam, he stopped at a place and he said that the 2 people should guard this place so that others can sleep peacefully. And 2 people should be there on watching, guarding. So 2 of the Sahaba Ikram, they volunteered themselves for this duty. And the Prophet ﷺ asked and directed both of them to go on a particular hilltop and then keep an eye over the enemy so that the enemy does not attack suddenly and the enemy doesn't hurt people. So both these Sahaba Ikram, they went to that hilltop and they kept sitting there for a while, watching, on the lookout. Then after some time, they discussed with each other and said that, if both of them kept awake, both of them stayed awake, then at some point during the night, both of them might feel sleepy and they might fall asleep. So they thought that it's better that one person stays awake right now and the other can sleep. And then later on, both can switch. The other will be awake and then the first will sleep. And this way, the duty can also be fulfilled and we can also pass our time as well. So therefore, one of them, he slept and the other stayed awake. Now that the Sahabi, radiallahu anh, who was awake, he thought that if I'm awake, if I have to stay awake, then it's better that I start praying 2 rakat nafil. And instead of just watching around, why not just make a niyat of praying as well? So he made intention of 2 rakat nafil, and he started reciting Quran. And he's reciting Surah Kahf. And he was enjoying this recitation so much that he continued reciting Surah Kahf. In the meanwhile, the enemy came. And the enemy, they saw the army, the Muslims, they're sleeping. And they wondered that, is there anyone who's guarding nearby? Is there anyone on the watch out? So the enemy, they noticed that there is one man who's standing on the hilltop. So they shot an arrow, which hit that Sahabi's body on the foot. And blood started coming out. But the Sahabi, he kept on reciting Surah Kahf. Then the enemy shot the second arrow. And another part of the body started to bleed. But he continued to recite the Quran. In this way, many arrows were hit and he started bleeding from several places. Actually, the masla of breaking of wudu, that had not been revealed at that time yet. So he kept on reciting the Quran. And he kept on reciting Quran to such an extent that finally at one point he felt that I might faint because of excessive bleeding. And if I fainted, then who would wake up my companion? And who would guard against the army? Who would guard the army? Who would, tell that the enemy is coming? So this would be sort of a disobedience, right? This would be irresponsible. So therefore, then finally he finished quickly. He finished his salah, and then he hurriedly went to his companion. He woke him up, and he said that, Wallahi, I was feeling such a joy in reciting Quran that if the enemy had continued shooting arrows, I would have kept bearing all of those arrows, but I would have never finished my salah before reciting Surah Kahf, before ending Surah Kahf. And they were enjoying Quran, they would enjoy their Quran so much that they were happy in feeling those arrows, that arrows are being shot. I would have kept on bearing those arrows, but I would never have finished my salah except that I would have completed Surah Kahf. They would enjoy their Quran. Just like today when we eat ice cream, we enjoy every scoop of ice cream. In the same way, the early Muslims, the Sahaba Ikram, they were people, they were Ahlullah, they were Ahle Quran. They would recite Quran with love. They would feel the sweetness reciting every ayat of the Quran. Their state would change when they would listen to the Quran. Their kafiyat would change. Their hal would change. In Quran, Allah Ta'ala testifies to this. That وَإِذَا سَمِعُوا مَا أُنزِلَ إِلَى الرَّسُولِ, that when they listen to the Quran, then تَرَى أَعْيُنَهُمْ تَفِيضُ مِنَ الدَّمْعِ مِمَّا عَرَفُوا مِنَ الْحَقِّ. Then tears begin to flow from their eyes. When they're listening to the Quran, tears begin to flow from their eyes. يَقُولُونَ, and they would be saying, رَبَّنَا آمَنَّا, that, oh our Lord, we have brought Iman. فَاكْتُبْنَا مَعَ الشَّاهِدِينَ. Oh Allah, we testify. Allah, write our names among those who testify to faith, who testify to Deen. وَمَا لَنَا لَا نُؤْمِنُ بِاللَّهِ وَمَا جَاءَنَا مِنَ الْحَقِّ وَنَتْمَوْ أَنْ يُدْخِلَنَا رَبُّنَا مَعَ الْقَوْمِ الصَّالِحِينَ. Subhanallah. And when they would make dua while reciting and listening to the Quran. So there have been Ahle Quran in every age. This is one of the blessings of Allah Ta'ala, that in every age, in every day in time, every zamana, there have been extreme lovers of the Quran. There is no other book like that, which has been loved in this way. This Quran is a book which has been recited when people are lonely. When there is no one, people still recite the Quran. This Quran is recited in majlis, in gatherings. Quran is recited in the darkness in the middle of the night. Quran is recited in broad daylight. It is recited quietly. It is recited loudly. People cry reading the Quran. People cry listening to the Quran. Every single word of the Quran, people try to memorize, people try to understand, people try to implement. The lovers of the Quran, they spend their whole life just revolving and thinking about the Quran. The lovers of the Quran, they spend their whole life engaging the Quran, thinking about the Quran, memorizing the Quran, reciting the Quran, listening to the Quran, doing amal on the Quran, serving the Quran, loving the Quran. And eventually they say that, oh Allah, if you bless us with another life, with a new life, we would spend our whole life reading and listening to the Quran. This is one of the greatest acts of virtue, to teach Quran, to learn Quran, to study Quran and to teach Quran. The most afzal of people, the most khair among people, the most good, the greatest goodness among people lies in this fact that someone who either studies the Quran or teaches the Quran. So this is a kitab. There is no other kitab like this in the world, which has been loved so much. Allahu Akbar. I'll share with you one beautiful story that we heard from our own Shaykh Azaji. This was it's in 1987. And our Shaykh, he mentioned that he had a chance he was living in America at that time for some time. And at that time, there was this very famous Qari of Egypt by the name of Qari Abdul Basit. You can Google, you'll be able to find him. Very famous, back then his cassettes were just like today we have Qari Sudes. So he was a very famous Qari of Egypt, Qari Abdul Basit al-Misri. And he was also by chance visiting America at that time. And he would be invited to recite the Quran in those gatherings. And our own Shaykh, he said that I would be invited to say something either in Urdu or in English about whatever was being recited in the Quran. So these gatherings would take place at different places. And, if you listen, Qari Abdul Basit, he recites Quran with a lot of love, with a lot of depth. And Allah Ta'ala had blessed him with a beautiful voice that whoever would listen to his recitation, they would be amazed. So our Shaykh said that Qari Abdul Basit, he loved our own Shaykh so much that he would not call him by name. He would call him as Rajulus Salih, as a righteous person, Rajulus Salih. Anyway, once someone asked Qari Abdul Basit that you read Quran, you read Quran in such a beautiful way, such a unique way. Have you ever witnessed a miracle of the Quran? No, Quran is a miracle, but have you ever witnessed a personal miracle in your own life because of your attachment with the Quran? And he replied, one miracle. I've witnessed millions of them. So the Shaykh, he asked him that, can you tell any one of them to us? So Qari Abdul Basit, he narrated this incident himself. And he said that once when Jamal Abdul Nasser, he was the president of Egypt, he paid an official visit to Russia. This was USSR at that time. It was a communist government there. Communism was in its heyday at that time. It was dominating. And the entire world was actually quite afraid of this revolution. And today it's no longer there, but this was back when it was a communist government. So Jamal Abdul Nasser, he reached Moscow and he did some official meetings there. And then there was a time which was reserved for discussions after the meeting. And then they started chatting with each other. And while chatting, the communists, they said that Jamal Abdul Nasser, you roam around as a Muslim. If you can take care of our red book, which was the book of the communists, their manifesto, the communist manifesto was called the Red Book. So they said that if you take this red book and you take care of our red book, you also become a communist, then your country will dramatically advance in science and technology. We'll introduce technology to your country. You will become among the developed nations. Leave Islam and adopt communism. So Jamal Abdul Nasser, he did not answer them. But in his heart, he was in rage. He was angry. He said, how do they say something like this to me? But he outwardly did not respond. The meeting ended and then he came back to Egypt. But he was restless. That I should have spoken the truth. I should have spoken about Islam more clearly. I should have defended myself, defended my deen. I couldn't do justice at that time. He was restless about this. Then after 2 years, Jamal Abdul Nasser, he again had a chance to visit Russia. And Qari Abdul Basit, he said that I received a letter from the president, Jamal Abdul Nasir, that you have to prepare and you have to accompany me on this journey to Moscow. And I will not listen to any excuses. You have to come with me. Qari Abdul Basit, he says that I was amazed that why would the president need me at a country, at a place where they're non-believers? There's no Muslim. Why would they need me? Anyway, he prepared and he went with the president. And when they reached Moscow, the president, they had their meetings. And when the meetings ended, again, they had some time for discussion, for chit-chatting. And he said this time, Jamal Abdul Nasir, he had the courage. And he had the courage to say to the other people, the communists there, who were part of the meeting, he said to them that I have brought this companion of mine and he will recite something in front of you and you have to listen. So they asked that what would he recite? He said that he would recite the Quran, which is our book. You have the red book, we have our book, Quran. He will recite the Quran. And they said, okay, fine, go ahead. So he said that Qari Abdul Basit is saying that I was requested that now used to begin reciting the Quran. And he said that I closed my eyes the way normally I do. And I started reciting the same ruku of Surah Taha. After listening to which, Sayyidina Umar radiallahu ta'ala, he had accepted Islam. He had accepted Iman. So I began reciting the very same ruku and I'm reciting. And he said that when I completed that ruku and I opened my eyes after reciting 2 ruku, I witnessed the miracle of the Quran sitting right in front of me. There were like 4 or 5 communist men. They were crying with tears in their eyes. They said that we don't understand what this person has recited, but these words have so much of an effect that we feel that our hearts have melted. We cannot express ourselves. Allahu Akbar Kabira. Subhanallah. These are people who don't even believe in the Quran. Yet, their hearts are melting because of listening to the Quran. So imagine if a person who believes in the Quran, who loves the Quran, when they start reciting the Quran, how much of an effect that would have on their heart. The teacher of our own Shaykh, Hazrat Murshid Alam Rahmatullah, he would ask this question, that who makes pathways in the river? Who makes pathways in the river? Nobody makes them. Right? A river itself makes its own path. Quran is also a river of the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which makes its own path into the hearts of people. You don't need anything else. Quran makes its own path in the hearts of people. That is why when some of the non-believers, non-Muslims, they listen to the Quran, they accept Islam. So the Sahaba Ikram, they were people who embraced the Quran. And whoever embraces the Quran, wherever they would go, they would succeed. And because of this Quran, Allah Ta'ala gives them izzat. Allah Ta'ala gives them honor. Allah Ta'ala uplifts them. There are how many people who have been blessed because of their taluk with the Quran. They have been blessed with a status because of the Quran, given a maqam which they did not have before. But when they embraced the Quran, Allah Ta'ala lifted them up. Once Sayyidina Umar radiallahu ta'ala an, he was going with an army, and on his way he stopped at the foot of a hill. And it was summertime, people were sweating, it was hot. And since Amirul Mu'mineen Sayyidina Umar radiallahu ta'ala an, he was standing, and the whole army had to stand, they had to stop. And Sayyidina Umar radiallahu ta'ala an, he was looking downwards towards this hill. So a man, he came forward and he asked, Amirul Mu'mineen, what's the reason for staying? What's the reason for stopping? The whole army is waiting for you. And then Sayyidina Umar radiallahu ta'ala, he replied that this is a place where I used to come when I was young. And I used to graze my camels here. Before accepting Islam, that's what I used to do. And this is the place where I used to come to graze my camels. And back then, my father used to beat me up and tell me that, Umar, how would you ever succeed in life? You don't even know how to graze camels. And I'm thinking about today that when, because of the barakat of Quran, I'm standing here as Amirul Mu'mineen of this entire Jamaat. I've stopped here, and because of me, the entire army has stopped behind me. Allahu Akbar. And then Sayyidina Umar radiallahu ta'ala, he said that أَعَذَّنَ اللَّهُ تَعَالَى بِهَذَا الدِّينِ, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us izzat because of the barakah of this deen. There are lovers of Quran. Allah ta'ala gives izzat. And I once, in one of the bayans that I was listening of my own Shaykh, he said something very beautiful. He said that if you look at the entire history of the Ummah, and you look at all those people who gained kubuliyah and acceptance in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you analyze their life and you will realize that every single individual who attained kubuliyat, became makbul in the sight of Allah ta'ala, whom Allah ta'ala accepted for deen, for khidmat of deen, you analyze their life, you will realize that every single one of them, either they were ashiq Quran themselves, or they got the dua of an ashiq Quran. Either they were lovers of Quran themselves, or they got the dua of someone who was a lover of the Quran. Every single individual. Obviously, Sayyidina Rasulullah, Nabi Salatu Islam was ashiq Quran. Then after that, look at Sayyidina Siddiq Akbar radiallahu ta'ala an, Khalifatul Rasul, such a maqam, such a great rank, such a great immense kubuliyat, but he was also ashiq Quran. When his daughter Sayyidina Aisha Siddiqa radiallahu ta'ala anha, when people started, they put a tuhmat on her. It's a long story. So she came, she was worried, and she came to her parents' house. And when she opened the door inside, Sayyidina Siddiq Akbar radiallahu ta'ala, he was reciting the Quran. When Nabi Salatu Islam later came to find out, to meet his wife, and he entered the house, again Sayyidina Siddiq Akbar radiallahu ta'ala, he was reciting the Quran. And he had an attachment with the Quran, reciting the Quran. Sayyidina Umar radiallahu ta'ala, Quran, ashiq Quran. He accepted Islam because of Quran. He would say, Azzan Allahu ta'ala bihazad din. Sayyidina Usman radiallahu ta'ala, ashiq Quran. So much ashiq, such a love for Quran, that when he passed away, he was reciting the Quran at that time. Sayyidina Ali radiallahu ta'ala, ashiq Quran. Then you move forward. Sayyidina Hazrat Imam Abu Hanifa rahmatullah alayh. Imam Abu Hanifa rahmatullah alayh, he was also ashiq Quran. Today, about more than 50% of the jurisprudence which is followed is according to the Hanafi fiqh. And such a kubuliyat of Hanafi madhab. And if you look at the life of Imam Hanifa rahmatullah, he was ashiq Quran. It's mentioned about him that in Ramadan he would complete 63 Qurans. 1 Quran during the day, 1 Quran during the night, and 3 Quran in Taraweeh. Imam Shafi rahmatullah ashiq Quran. Ashiq Quran, he would go from, once he was going traveling from Makkah Mukarramah to Medina Tayyibah, and back then it would take about 16 days on the back of a camel to complete this journey. So he made this journey in 16 days, and 16 days he completed 16 Quran. Allahu Akbar. Such an ishq, such a love for the Quran. Sayyidina Imam Malik rahmatullah alayhi ashaq Quran. Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal rahmatullah alayhi ashaq Quran, lover of Quran. He was famously whipped and lashed because of his attachment with the Quran. This masla Quran that he said, Quran is not makhluk. Quran is not created. Again, displaying how much love he had for the Quran. Anyone who has ever attained Qabuliyat in the sight of Allah Ta'ala, those who have attained this rank of Maqbool, become Maqbool and Mahboob to Allah Ta'ala, you will see that they were either Ashaq Quran or they got the dua of someone who was an Ashaq Quran, lover of the Quran. Closer to our time, we see Tablighi Jamaat. Tablighi Jamaat, such an incredible movement, so Maqbool. And the founder of this movement was Maulana Ilyas Rahmatullah. And Maulana Ilyas Rahmatullah's father, he was a teacher of the Quran. He was an ashik of the Quran. He was a lover of the Quran. He would teach kids Quran. He got the dua. His son got the dua of his father. So there are lovers of Quran in every day, in every age. And if we can also embrace Quran and become a lover of the Quran, then inshallah, Allah Ta'ala will also bless us with Qubuliyat. Once we heard this story from our own teachers that in Pakistan there was an alim who took bayah and said that I want to embark this journey of drawing close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he started learning the Quran in the masjid. And then one day he came and he mentioned his story about his father. And he said that my father used to be a great lover of the Quran. He had made, he would recite the Quran as part of his daily regimen. And he would keep reciting Quran every day consistently without any breaks. Every day this was his daily regimen, reciting Quran. Once somebody came and asked and told my father that if you recite one complete Quran daily for 2 years, then the blessings of the Quran will open up for you and for your generations to come. If you can recite one complete Quran every day for 2 years. Allahu Akbar. It's such a big challenge, huh? Yani completing one Quran every day and then doing it consistently for 2 years. If you can do that, then inshallah you will see how the barakat of Quran will open up across your generations. So this person was narrating the story. He said that my father, he liked that idea. He said, I'm going to try this. And he says that my father, then he took upon this challenge and used to recite one complete Quran every day. And whatever his condition used to be, he whether he was sick, whether he was traveling, whether he was in some difficulty, he continued. He made this his habit. He would complete one Quran daily for 2 years. And the effect of that was that later on, all of my father's sons, my father's sons, all of them, my father's daughters, all of them, then the children of my father's sons, all of them, and then the children of my father's daughters, all of them, every person who was of the age of 7 or elder, 7 or old, all of them became Hafiz-e-Quran. And the barakat of Quran opens up across your generations. I was in the US, and I was, we're going from Ohio to Chicago to the airport. It was about a 5 hour journey, roughly. And there was a driver who was an Afghani driver. And I just wanted to have a conversation with him because in 5 hours, I thought we'll just ask. And I asked that, what do you do? When did you come from Afghanistan? And how do you spend your time here? He said, I'm a truck driver. I travel back and forth. I drive people back and forth. That's what I do. Uber driver. That's what I do for a living. And sometimes, hours are tough. I have to work several hours during the day. But he said that I have a love for Deen and I have a love for the Quran, and I'm trying my best to raise my kids up in Islamic way as well. And then he narrated this story that he said that about 1 or 2 years ago, when it was COVID time, he said at that time business was a bit low and it was Ramadan. So I didn't have much work to do. It was a low season for me. So I thought that it's a low season for me, so might as well engage Quran a bit more. So I would recite one Quran daily. And I did this for the entire month of Ramadan. And he was not a Hafiz of Quran. He would recite Quran by looking. So I did this the entire in one, Alhamdulillah, I made the niyat. He said, I made a niyat on the first of Ramadan that every day I will finish one Quran. And I continued doing this. And he said that on the 29th of Ramadan, I had completed 29 Quran. And then I was making dua that Allah Ta'ala, please give me one more day so that I can fulfill my pact to you and I can complete 30 Qurans. Because that's the intention I had made at the start of the month. And then time was very short. So my last Quran was left. So I started reciting. And Alhamdulillah, he says that before the 30 days were complete, I was able to complete my 30 Qurans. One Quran every day. An Afghani truck driver living in the US with all of his responsibilities of earning bread and butter and having a family. I think he had about 9 children to support. Supporting a family of 9 kids in America in 2023, he could recite one Quran daily for one entire month of Ramadan. And I asked him that, what was your routine? He said that I would, how long does it take you? He said, if I start at Zohar time, then from Zohar to Zohar, I can complete Quran. That's what I used to do. Start at Zohar, and I would complete the Quran by the next Zohar. And in between, there is Sehri, there is Iftari, there is Taravi, there is truck driving. Even if it's less, the workload is less, but still, nonetheless, taking time for a family, for 9 kids, all of that, all of whatever, person needs to do for their earning, their livelihood. He had all of that, in fact, much more being a refugee. But Alhamdulillah, these are the people. Lovers of Quran. You will find that in every day, in every age, in our age as well. If an Afghani truck driver with such a responsibility on his shoulder can recite one Quran every day for the entire month, then why can't we recite one juz of Quran? Forget one Quran, one juz, one para of Quran every day. Why can't we recite half a para every day? Why can't we recite 1/4 of a juz every day? Why can't we recite one page of Quran every day? There are people who are completing one entire Quran every day. We can't even open one page of Quran every day. And we give our excuses that I'm busy, I have kids, I have family, I have work. We need to rectify our relationship with the Quran. This Quran will do shifa'at on the day of Qiyamah. It will intercede either on our behalf or against us. So this person, if he fulfilled the haqq of Quran, then Quran will intercede on our behalf. This comes in a hadith Mubarak, that Quran and Majid will be presented as a young man, and it will request Allah Ta'ala that, oh Allah, that whoever memorized me, whoever used to recite me, whoever did justice to me, whoever were my companions, my lovers, I was their guest. Allah, I was their guest and they were hospitable to me. Oh Allah, send them to Jannat. And Allah Ta'ala will send them to Jannat without any hisab and kitab on the sifarish of Quran, on the intercession of the Quran. So Quran will intercede either on our behalf or against us on the day of Qiyamah. So if we also develop a relationship with the Quran, then Allah Ta'ala will make our lives honorable. I'll just end with one or two final thoughts. When the last verses of the Quran were being revealed, that Allah Ta'ala, akmaltu dinakum wa atmamtu alaykum ni'mati, that Allah Ta'ala has completed your religion for you. Allah Ta'ala has completed upon you His blessing. So this verse, that today those who are unbelievers have been saddened by your religion. This was also revealed. And it has been set in their heart that for those who oppose the Muslims, it's not easy for them to overpower the Muslims. Allah Ta'ala says, don't be fearful of anyone, just be fearful of me. As long as we are fearful of Allah Ta'ala will keep helping us. That side on which we have the help of Allah Ta'ala, that side will always be heavy. So the diseases that we have, the solution to these diseases, the solution to our problems lies in the Quran. Our hearts have many diseases. Quran gives us shifa. Quran gives us spiritual health. وَيَشْفِي صُدُورَ قَوْمٍ مُؤْمِنِينَ. It gives shifa to the hearts of people. Shifa lima fi sudur. It's a shifa for what lies inside of our chest. وَنُنَزِّلُ مِنَ الْقُرْآنِ مَا هُوَ شِفَاءً وَرَحْمَةٌ لِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ. That the Quran is a shifa. So many ayat we learn that Quran is a shifa. It's, if there's dirt and dust and najasat on our heart, and we want to wash the filth away from our heart, the way to wash away this filth is to have a ta'alluq with the Quran, to recite Quran. What needs to be done is not just to keep reciting Quran with our tongue, but to take this Quran deep into our hearts. This is what needs to be done. Let the Quran sink into our hearts. Enjoy the Quran. Enjoy Quran. Enjoy the ta'seer of Quran, the ishq of Quran. There was once, I'll end with the story, how can you get the ta'seer of Quran? How can you get the effect of Quran? How can you feel that effect in your life? There's this once a village boy, a boy living in a village. And on the way, he was going somewhere, and one day he saw this bullet, an old-fashioned bullet. We have these rifles and all, which you call kartoos, right? Like a tablet bullet. He had never seen anything like that before, so he just picked it up and he went ahead, and then he met an old man. So the old man, when he saw that this young boy is holding this bullet, he said that, oh boy, this is a very dangerous thing that you have in your hand. Even a lion can be killed. You can kill a lion with this, with what you're carrying, with this small little thing that you have in your hand. You can kill a lion with it. The boy, he heard the sentence and he kept that bullet in his pocket. Then after a few days, he was going somewhere and there was this dog, and the dog was chasing this boy. So the boy was running and the dog was coming from behind. So all of a sudden he remembered that he had a bullet in his pocket. And he also remembered that old man, what he had said. So he turned around and he threw the bullet at the dog, and nothing happened. Right? Nothing happened. Instead, the dog became even more rowdy. After this episode, the boy, he met the old man again, and he said that, you told me that this bullet can even kill a boy. It can kill a lion. It didn't even help me get rid of one dog. So then the old man, he laughed and he said that you didn't understand properly what I said. He said that this bullet has the power. However, there is a way to get this into use. There is a way to unleash that power. The bullet has the power, but there is a mechanism, there is a method, there is a way through which you can unleash the power of this bullet. The boy said that, what's the method? The man said that, no, there is a gun. When you put this bullet in that gun, that's when the power of the bullet will be unleashed. Exactly in the same way, Quran is like that bullet. Quran is like that bullet, but you have to plant this bullet in your 6 feet body that you are. You plant this, you embrace the Quran in your life, you embrace this Quran in your heart, you start implementing the Quran in your life, then you will be able to see the power of the Quran. You'll be able to unleash the power of the Quran. Quran is a bullet, but you have to implant this bullet in your life, in this 6 feet body that you have. From the tips of your eyes to the sole of your feet, become an embodiment of the Quran. The power of the Quran will be unleashed through you. The power of the Quran will be unleashed through you. And then such a person, when they will raise their hands at night and make dua to Allah Ta'ala, the world maps can change because of their du'as. Destinies can change because of such a person's dua. Taqdeer can be changed because of such people's dua. The Sahaba Ikram were very few people, but they had the asal of Quran in their life, the hakikat of Quran in their life. Hence, when they will raise their hands, kam min fi'atin qalila ghalabat fi'atan kathira bi'idhnillah. A small group of people would be able to overcome a large group of people by the izn of Allah Ta'ala. Wallahu ma'as sabri. So we need to develop this muhabbat of Quran in our lives. We should try to remove that ghaflat, remove the heedlessness, have a ta'alluq with the Quran, a daily ta'alluq with the Quran, whether one juz or half a juz or whatever we can manage, but do it consistently. Do it daily. Try to recite Quran with concentration. And we should make tawbah from our previous ghafla. And if we do this, then inshallah Allah Ta'ala will give us, Quran will give us success. This is the barakat of Quran. Allah Ta'ala will make that person succeed in this dunya and in akhir. Allah Ta'ala will grant you izzat in this world and akhir. Allah Ta'ala will grant you shifa in this world. Allah Ta'ala will grant you respect in this world and akhirah. Just like the Prophet ﷺ would do shifaat on the day of Qiyamah, similarly, Quran will also do shifaat. Quran will take its reciters to Jannat. Allah Ta'ala will say that, oh my servant, recite Quran and enter into Jannat. And your ranks in Jannat will increase with every word that you recite. So may Allah Ta'ala grant all of us the muhabbat of Quran. May Allah Ta'ala grant all of us a ta'alluq with the Quran. May Allah Ta'ala grant all of us the barakat of Quran. Wa akhiru da'wana and alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. So we should make this dua to Allah Ta'ala that Allah make us Qari of the Quran, make us Hafiz of the Quran. Allah make us Alim of the Quran, make us Amil of the Quran. Allah make us Da'i of the Quran. Allah make us Nashir of the Quran. Allah make us Ashik of the Quran, lovers of the Quran. Rather, Allah make our whole lifestyle like the Quran. Make the Quran our lifestyle. So we should keep making dua to Allah Ta'ala. May Allah Ta'ala accept this dua in niyat from all of us. And may Allah Ta'ala grant all of us out of His rahmah a ta'alluq with the Quran, a ta'alluq of love, a ta'alluq of muhabba. May Allah Ta'ala grant us the ta'asir and the barakat of Quran. May Allah Ta'ala include our names also amongst the Ahle Quran and cause Quran to intercede on our behalf on the day of Qiyamah. And through this intercession, may Allah Ta'ala enable all of us that we can also enter into Jannat easily without any hisab and kitab. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Inshallah, from next week, we'll start our tafsir sessions. Jazakumullah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. For the first years, we will take a roughly 15-minute break. And after that, we'll resume, inshallah, with our next class. Assalamu alaikum.